So this week's video is going to look at the worst sequels to films that we can think of. I'm not necessarily looking at the lists that are produced by IMDb or those Looper or whoever videos out there. Our personal sort of, I was going to say favorite, but our preference or our worst films in our whatever I'm trying to say here. I don't really know, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. So, has anyone got one to start with, or shall we start with the image that's behind Adam, which is the son of Mask?
Yeah, he's on my list. It's not like the main one I want to talk about, but in terms of just like terrible, the reason I hint, there's another Jim Carrey sequel I'm going to talk about to this program, what it's going to be. But when thinking about other Jim Carrey sequels, Son of the Mask immediately popped up. It's just absolutely terrible. It's just a terrible, terrible. I don't think there's anyone listening to this podcast, or whoever will listen to this podcast, that will defend this film. It's that bad.
Who replaced Jim Carrey in this film?
Jamie Kennedy. He was from the Scream films. Remember in Scream, the nerdy sort of like film buff guy that guided him through like the rules of horror films. It's him. He kind of had like a bit of a comedy career. He had a TV career in like the early 2000s and stuff. Like he had shows like the Jamie Kennedy Experiment on TV.
Yo, I'm gonna tell you what it is one time. This is B-Rad G from Malibu. Ain't really easy me. You know what I'm saying?
And yeah, it's painfully bad. But Jamie Kennedy's like this stay-at-home dad, and then somehow he gets the mask, the one from the first one, and his baby son puts it on, and he's like this wacky, terribly CGI baby.
I thought it was going to be Stanley Ipkiss. That's who Carey plays in the first one, isn't it?
It is. Well, the comic books, I guess it is staying a bit true to the comics, because the comics, each like the series as the comic goes on, the mask changes hands. So Stanley Ipkiss, who I think is called Stanley Ipshit in the comics, is like he gets the mask first, and then it goes into someone else, and then it goes into someone else. So I think Dark Horse or New Line Cinema were like, oh, we'll just follow we have a bit of a get out of jail free card here, so we can stay a bit truer to the comics. But no, but the comics are like 18 rated, violent as fuck stuff anyway. So it's bad. We'll drop if you want to torture the viewers. Drop a clip of it in right now.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Send me a kiss, my wife. Baby, my heart's on fire. If you refuse me, honey, you lose me. Then you'll be left alone. Oh, baby, telephone and tell me I'm your own.
Go on then, Prog. Have you got one?
I wrote several down for various reasons. So any of the Transformers sequels.
Any of the Transformers for me.
I didn't mind the first Transformers film.
I'm with Adam. I think the first one is okay. I thought it was fairly enjoyable when it came out. I went to cinema to watch it. I walked out thinking that wasn't too bad. The sequels, it's just noise. I quit after 4. So anything after that, I think the Mark Wahlberg ones were after that, and I didn't even bother.
Is it Revenge of the Fallen, the second one, or something?
Well, number 2 was the one I wrote down and was gonna highlight.
Yeah,
and that's the one. That's the one in Egypt with the pyramid.
That's the last one I ever watched, because I took my little brother to the cinema to see it, and as I left, I was like, I'm never watching a Transformers film ever again, and I never have.
Well, I watched Transformers 2 on a plane to Vegas.
Yeah.
And that's a 9-hour flight. And all the excitement I had for Vegas was drained out of me after watching that film.
Why didn't you turn it off?
Because I had to kill time.
Yeah, but could you have chosen another film?
No, you're right, I could have, but I'm the type of person that, like, if I get 45 minutes into a film, I'm like, I've got to sit through the rest of this just so I can have an honest opinion and say, I watched it all the way through and I still didn't like it.
There's one thing I want to mention about that film, which is the biggest eye roll I've ever done in a movie. And obviously we know Michael Bay made the film, right? But you remember the bit with Shia LaBeouf's character's got like that? He's having like telekinetic messages from like the fucking rope transformers or whatever the fuck they're called. And like he's jibbing out like this, and like he starts writing on his college dorm room wall. And the first thing he starts writing on is a big Bad Boys 2 poster.
Look what other films I've done.
I know. I remember just being like, oh man, Michael Bay, like so shameless.
So I'll give you another 2 films that this is for another reason that I think they're the worst sequels, and it's because I was so disappointed by them. And it is Matrix 2 and Matrix 3. Ooh. Because I loved the first one. When number 2 came out, I was very, very excited to go to the cinema to watch it. I'd read, it was one of those films where, because the first one was such a big deal and I loved it so much, I remember reading like magazine articles about the second one and like how much money they spent on certain sections of the film. And remember the scene on the motorway, and it's like a 15-minute scene, the car chase. And they were saying about how long it took them to film and how much money and effects and so on. And I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. This film's going to be amazing. And I watched it and I was just
bored.
I was just so let out. I'm not saying it's one of the worst films ever. I'm not saying it's as bad a film as some of the others I've written down. But in terms of the letdown, I think that was the biggest one for me I've had in the cinema.
I can't comment much on Matrix Reloaded or Revolutions because as we know, I don't know if the Matrix podcast will come up before this, but I kind of not really paid attention to the Matrix films until like last week. But I am tempted to watch Reloaded now. But I've seen some of it on TV before, and I did fall asleep.
It had the potential to be amazing. Do you know with the ghosts? I know if they are ghosts. You know the twins or the whatever they are. That whole concept should have been brilliant. And the car chase that you're on about.
The worst thing I had with number 2 is there's 2 things, right? They spend too much time in Zion, in the real world, right? It's called The Matrix, set it in The Matrix. The second problem I had was the return of Agent Smith. Agent Smith is a program. Neo's supposedly destroyed that program. So why is he coming back? And also, he's not just coming back, he manages to get into the real world. I just lost it.
Andrew, I know you love your box office figures, right? And I just did a quick scan of this online. The Matrix Revolutions broke Terminator 2's box office record by being the highest grossing R-rated film of all time until being beaten by Deadpool in 2016. On a budget of 150 million, 127 million even, it's made $740 million.
Yeah.
All right.
But do you know why? That's because of the first film.
But listen to this, right? Then the third one, 427 million. So I think that kind of shows, doesn't it, that the drop off. That's a fucking 300 million drop.
And I said this when we did the Matrix podcast. They're just too complicated, or they're too convoluted. There's too much going on. Prog nails it on the head with the fact that it's set more in Zion than it is in the Matrix, and it just needed to be. It just needed to take what they did in the first one and just do it very well and make it straightforward. But anyway, right, let's move on to the next one. And I'm going to pick a film this time, and I'm going to pick Robocop 3.
Ooh,
awful film. So take the first one. And for me, and we've done it on the podcast, for me, it was one of my films of my childhood growing up. I probably watched it from maybe the age of 10, 11 onwards. It's uber violent. The director, his style where he uses, TV advertising and TV shows and things like that, and propaganda and all of that. I think is brilliant. Number 2, a lot of people don't like it, but I still think it's okay. It's not amazing, but it still has the uber violence and it still has something about it. But number 3, absolutely shocking. The bit, well, when he can fly.
They're winning, aren't they, Sludge?
All of a sudden, you're turning into some sort of like toy range, and that's exactly what they did. You know, they were thinking more, how can we market this out to children and things? I personally think, anyway. But the worst thing about it are the bad guys in it. The 2 samurai evil guys at the end, really, really bad. And it just looks shit compared to the rest of it.
Can I just say, but like the guy that made that film, Fred Decker, I actually do like some of his output. Like I like Monster Squad. He made Monster Squad and he made House, the old horror film from back in the day. Now, Robocop is my favorite movie of all time. Like I love Robocop I've said this, I've been saying this for like over like 10, 15 years, but Robocop is my number 1 favorite film of all time. I love that film. I did like number 3 when I was a kid, and I didn't like number 2 when I was a kid. But I think I like number 3 because it was, like you just put it, it was like a kiddie funland, sort of like stupid. But I've rewatched it as an adult, and it is fucking dire. It is a terrible film.
Again, sorry to say, I can't contribute because I haven't watched Robocop 3, and I'll tell you why I haven't watched it. Because when I saw that it was certified 15 in the UK, I, in my head, thought that's not a Robocop film.
If any listeners right now want us to do Robocop 3 for Rewind the Movies, write down below, because that would be a very interesting discussion.
We got to do number 2 first. I quite like 2.
See, number 2, I just think I could watch number 3 over number 2, because I find number 2 very, very boring, because it's so zany and wacky and nothing lands in it for me. I find number 2 incredibly sluggish and boring to get through. So I would actually say number 3 is my preferred one, because at least number 3 is like, oh, that's so bad it's good factor going on for it. But number 2 is just dull in my eyes. I find it just like a complete, like, and I'll watch it again for Rewind the Movies. I will watch it again and make notes and discuss it in depth. But number 3, I'd much, if someone said number 2 or 3 right now, I'd pick number 3.
Have you got another film, Ad?
Yes, I do. Now, this is another one. The original to this is another one of my favorite films of all time. And the sequel I want to talk about here is Dumb and Dumber 2, that came out in 2014.
I knew you were going to bring this one up.
No, I know. Has anyone here seen that film?
I never got on the Dumb and Dumber train.
Oh, man. It's like one of my favorite films ever, like Dumb and Dumber. It's like not like my number 1 or anything, but like I just... It's...
So, can I just double check? This is the one that doesn't star Jim Carrey.
No,
that one is bad as well.
All right.
But now I could sit here and pick Dumb and Dumberer, that one's called. I think it's from like 2001, 2002 or something. I could sit here and pick that one easily. But the reason this one's worse to me is because it has Jeff Daniels and Jim Carrey on board, and the Farrelly brothers, all of the original writing crew and stuff from the first one. And it's just fucking terrible. It is like, now, Prog knows this because it came on TV the one night we sat there and watched it together. There is one incredibly funny scene in it, okay? There is one bit where I might have chuckled a little bit at it. Am I right, Prog? I did a sort of laugh.
You didn't chuckle, but you burst out laughing and you rewound the part to watch it again.
Was there a proper belly laugh?
Yeah, it was. we turned the film on. It was like half an hour into the film, or maybe 40 minutes into the film, and he spent the next 10 minutes just berating how bad this film was. This moment happened, and he pissed himself laughing, grabbed the remote, and rewound it back so he could watch it again. And he turned to me and he went like that. All right, that was good.
That bit was fucking hilarious, though. That was like, I just must have forgot about it, because I think when I first saw it, I was so like that watching, like, what is this? I just when I watched it again, I let my guard down, and that bit happened, and it got me.
For the people watching and listening, it's the scene where the guy screams in front of a train.
Well, I reckon just put the clip into this podcast right now. Just put the clip in right now.
I can't hear you! So long, boy!
So, I'm going to reel off a couple of my other ones, right? And I'm not going to go too much into it. Staying Alive. So,
Never
second Saturday Night Fever. Terrible film, directed by Sylvester Stallone. The first one, for me, is iconic. I remember watching it for the first time as a teen. Love the music, love everything about the first one. The second one's really bad, apart from Jamie Lee Curtis. And
she's good in anything, isn't she?
Yeah, and she's smoking hot in that. So, I've got a list in front of me, right? And I'm not saying I've seen this film, but because it's on a list that I found on the internet, and considering I don't like the first one, it's Mannequin 2. So me and Prog watched it recently for the podcast, and we weren't a fan of the original. So if that one's even worse, God help it. Any more from anyone?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Go on, Ad, you go first.
It's not really a sequel, it's more of a prequel, but I think it's the worst in the entire franchise, and it's Star Wars Episode 2.
Is that one of the worst sequels, though?
Yeah. God,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That is fucking pink. At least Episode 1 has the pod race in it. Number 3 is boring as well. Episode 3 is incredibly boring, but I always think Episode 2 is just the worst one.
The weird thing for me is, despite how much I'm not a fan of the second trilogy of the Star Wars films, they are redeemable to me because Ewan McGregor is in them. Although I will concede that the second film is bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just everything's bad. Nothing works in it. Boring, terrible. Next.
I've got a film here. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows.
That's a good film. That is a very good.
What
are you talking about? That's a classic one. When was the last time you watched that, though?
Oh, years ago. No, you're right, but I might have. The thing is, right?
I don't know. I can't take him serious now because he's done this so many times.
No. I'm telling you right now, Blair Witch 2, right? I used to hate that film as well, right? And then I went back and watched one night. I watched the Blair Witch 1, and I was like, I'm going to watch Blair Witch: Book of Shadows, and I actually was just like, this is actually a really good film, but it's not like the best film ever made, but like it's got that sort of like when you go back and watch it now, it's got that early 2000s horror film charm to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So were you like me then? Because when I watched it originally, and I admit I've not watched it since, I was disappointed. This is another one where I was let down because I was a fan of the original one. Is that the same for you?
I think so, yeah, because I think everyone went into that film expecting like another found footage horror film, but instead it's like a more of a fictional movie set within the Blair Witch universe. But I actually really like that film. I think it's like got some. I'm not saying we do it for rewind the movies or anything, but anyone listening to this right now, I'd recommend going back and giving it a second chance.
Okay, fair enough. Right, so I got a theory, right, and it's a theory that I've only just come up with because I've been looking over my list, and I'm also gonna say that theory isn't true because I'm gonna disprove it. So give me a chance here. But I think the fourth film in almost every franchise is not only the worst film in the franchise, but one of the worst films of all time. And I'm going to give you 3, and then I'm going to give you one that disproves the theory.
Okay.
Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol.
I quite like it.
No, you don't.
I do.
No, you don't.
Mission to Moscow's worse than that one.
It is worse, but I get where Prog's going with this.
He's saying that's the downfall.
Yeah. So Superman 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's got Gene Hackman in it, it should be amazing.
Well, it's got Christopher Reeve as Superman. It's got Superman in it. It shouldn't be bad. And Jaws 4: The Revenge.
Right, that was going to be my last one to mention because how how can you set a film around a shark who's after the family that killed his parent, family, whatever? Oh no, is it the mum shark who's and because it killed his son shark? I can't remember.
Who cares? It's bonkers. The plot is ridiculous.
Can I just say, there is one, when you said 4 films in a franchise, there is one that immediately split to mind. You're going to go, oh, I'd get over it. But out of all of these films, Friday the 13th Part 4 is my favourite one.
They all merge into the same for me. I can't even work out what it is.
Well, but I think that's actually when I think number 4 marks when Friday the 13th becomes awesome because Tommy Jarvis comes into the series. And I think that's when the films get really good. And Joe Zito made it, and he's the best director they had in that series.
Well, is Halloween 4 the worst one as well?
It's not. No, God, no. The worst Halloween film is number 2.
No, hang on a minute. Halloween 3, Return of the Witch or something. That's the worst.
Season of the Witch. Yeah, but I can't really say it much because I've never seen it. But it's got a big fan base behind it. People swear by it because at the time, Halloween 2 was terrible, and even though John Carpenter made it, John Carpenter admits I made it for the money. I purely just made it for the cash. He didn't direct it though. He wrote the screenplay, and then after that they sat down and they were like, okay, what we'll do, we'll revamp the Halloween franchise to be an anthology series, so a film comes out every Halloween. And Season of the Witch came out. The reason it was hated is because it was no Michael Myers, but it has got a strong cult following behind it there, so it's got a lot of people that defend it.
Okay. I've got
anyway,
another.
I was going to give you one film that disproves the theory of number 4, and that's Rocky 4.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, but yeah, easily best one in the series.
Yeah. Whereas in the Rocky series, is of course, and I was going to bring this up as my last film, Rocky 5, which is tripe. But I would still sit down and watch that.
Oh, I would. Yeah. Just for the Don King knockoff. I can't remember his name.
I can give you another 2 films which add to your theory though, straight off the bat.
Go on.
Die Hard 4, Lethal Weapon 4.
Batman and Robin.
That's the best one.
There we go. I'm telling you, this theory's got legs.
It's got Arnie in it, so I'll give it that much. But
I watched it on 4K a while ago. It's hilarious though. It's so funny.
Not taking me to the cooler.
But I'll give you Halloween though, because Halloween 4 is when it started going really shitty. But Halloween does come back with Halloween H2O.
No, I'm with you on that. But we've discussed that off screen a few times.
Yeah.
Late night in front of the telly where we said Halloween H2O was actually a good film. Yeah.
I'd also say Nightmare on Elm Street did the same thing, but it does bounce back with New Nightmare, which is the last one. But Halloween 4 and 5 and 6 are shit.
Before we end, right, I'm gonna just mention a couple of, not a couple of films, but looking back to the early 2000s when they started doing films or sequels to films that were from films from the 80s that were really good. And a couple of examples here, right? Dirty Dancing, they did Havana Nights. I've never seen it, but there was that trend where they went to revisit films and they were obviously just cashing in to try and look back on what they could have done. And that they did Easy Rider as well at some point. Wait a minute, I got it on my notes. Easy Rider, The Ride Back is called.
I never knew that film existed until just now. Great film, Easy Rider. Really good film.
Anyway, on that note, thanks, guys. The podcasts come out every Wednesday. Our specials come out on Friday on YouTube, so check them out. And if you've got a topic or a film you want us to discuss in the future, please just let us know. Cheers.
Also, if you've got a film you want a bad sequel to mention, write it down below.
Cheers. Oh, don't forget to subscribe and like.